Very warm good afternoon to one and all present over here in this webinar. On the behalf of PSIT College of Higher Education, I, Dr. Pratibha Rai, welcome you all in this much awaited webinar. And the theme of today's session is Impact of COVID-19 on Indian Economy and the Way Forward. Currently, we all know that the entire world is fighting a battle on two fronts. One is to save the lives of precious human beings, and other to provide necessary stimulus to economy so that millions of jobs can be protected. So, as we all know, this lockdown was the mandatory measure to restrict the measure of or impact of this COVID-19. But due to this lockdown, we are now at the verge of facing several economic problems and repercussions also. And now it is the most concerned topic for all the policymakers, government, industrialists, economists, academicians. Everyone is concerned about the revival of economy and the road ahead. So to today discuss this very crucial, important topic, we have with us eminent personality having expertise in the area of economics. So I would like to introduce our today's speaker. First, I would like to extend my heartiest welcome to Professor Adian Vajpayee sir, former Vice Chancellor, Himachal Pradesh University, Shimla. We welcome you, sir. Now, I would like to extend my cheerful welcome to Professor O.P. Shukla sir, Principal, National Defence Academy, Pune. We welcome you, sir. I would also like to extend my cordial welcome to Professor J.V. Vansampayan sir, Vice Chancellor, Bundelkhand University, Jhansi. We welcome you, sir. And in addition to that, I'm profusely elated to take this opportunity to extend my heartiest welcome to Group Captain UK Jhansi, University of Massachusetts, USA. We welcome you, sir. In addition to that, I would also like to extend my cordial welcome to Dr. Shivani Kapoor ma'am, Director, PSIT College of Higher Education. And in addition to that, I would also extend my cordial welcome to Dr. A.P.S. Bhadoria sir, Dean, PSIT College of Higher Education, Mrs. Rupa Bhalla ma'am, Dean, Student Affairs, PSIT Kanpur, Mrs. Garima Gupta ma'am, HOD, BBA, Dr. Udayabhan Trivedi sir, HOD, BCA. We welcome you, sir and ma'am. And last but not the least, I would like to welcome all the participants from various national and international institutes. And I'm very delighted today to share this webinar has been joined by several delegates from foreign country also. So PSIT College of Higher Education, delighted to welcome you all in this particular webinar. And I would like to again welcome from PSIT College of Higher Education to all the participants in this particular webinar. So moving forward, I would like to introduce moderator of this particular session, Dr. Shivani Kapoor ma'am, Director, PSIT College of Higher Education. Ma'am holds a doctorate degree in economics from CSJM University, Kanpur. She has authored various books and published several research papers in various reputed journals. And she has more than 20 years of experience in research, teaching, and administration. So I would like to request our director, ma'am, to further proceed with the session and moderate this panel discussion. Over to you, ma'am, please.
Thank you, Pratibha. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to moderate today's esteemed webinar, where we have people like Professor Adian Vajpayee, former Vice Chancellor in Himachal Pradesh University, Professor J.V. Vansampayan, Vice Chancellor, Bundelkhand University, Jhansi, and he has been the former Vice Chancellor Kanpur University and Rashtriya Tandon Open University also. Dr. O.P. Shukla, Principal of National Defence Academy, Pune, and Group Captain U.K. Jha, VM, retired, University of Massachusetts, United States of America. I'm really thankful to all to be the part of this webinar and giving us a privilege to listen to you people together. Before welcoming you people on the forum and delivering your talk, I wanted to put my insight also on the topic. Over the past, I have seen the economic impact of the coronavirus pandemic in India has been quite disruptive. The World and the other rating agencies, they have revised their India's growth of the fiscal year 2021, and we are watching the lowest figures which India has seen over the 3 decades since the liberalization in the year 1990. However, after the announcement of economic package in mid-May, India's estimate of GDP were downgraded even more to negative figures, which is signaling a deep recession. On 26th May, I remember, CRISIL announced that this will be perhaps India's worst recession since independence. And the State Bank of India research estimates a contraction of over 40% of GDP in the quarter over financial year 2021. Within a month, the unemployment rose from 6.7% as recorded on 15th March to 26% on April 19. During the lockdown, an estimate that 14 crore people, they lost their job employment while salaries were also cut for many. More than 45% of households across the nation have reported an income drop as compared to previous years. Indian economy, we expect a loss of over 32,000 crore every day during the first 21 days of complete lockdown. And under complete lockdown, less than a quarter of India's 2.8 trillion economic movements were functional. Up to 53% of businesses were affected. Supply chain has been put under stress with the lockdown, and with this, informal sectors and the daily wage group earners, they have seen the most risk. Major companies like L&T, BHEL, Ultratech Cement, Aditya Birla Group, they have considerably, withdrawn or suspended their operations. Stock market, the worst losses in the history in India is watching. Modi government, definitely, they have been, giving us economic packages. On 25th March, we had the first installment. Then on 12th May, we saw the government saying that 20 lakh crore budget has been released for all the operations which are facing setback these days. But what I personally feel is that a long is still to go. Long is still to go. Estimated fiscal impact on the budget from the 5 sets of announcement made will make only 1.5 lakh crores or 0.7% of GDP. This is my assessment. And if the additional expenditure under rupees 20 lakh crore package is added to the previously announced Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan package and rupees 15,000 crore allocated for strengthening health infrastructure, the total would be around rupees 12.7 crore or 1.2% of GDP, though the government claims it to be 10%, but I feel we are far apart from the actual figures that we are being calculated. Fiscal cost of the entire package, including announcements made in the government in March, will be around rupees 2.13 lakh crore or just 1% of the GDP. And the impact of the 10% of GDP package on fiscal deficit is very small. For the short run, the things could have been done, but rise in MNREGA outlays, free food grains for the needy, loan guarantees for MSMEs, NBFCs and the breathers from the IBS process. The economic package that has been announced by the center is prudent and consists of measures aimed at helping economy in the medium to long run. However, they are working only on the supply side and less is being done for the demand side. As an economist, I need to worry about the demand side also. So what has happened is that, yes, through MNREGA, the funds have been released, but to gauge the incremental and fiscal growth impact, we need to see that budgeted revenue expenditure growth is of 12% is maintained, merely rejected or augmented. So we have to work in that direction also. We have increased the daily wages from 182 rupees to 102, and with this there has been an increase of 28% in person day. But then if the trends which we are seeing of the migrant labor these days, we could witness higher enrollments under the schemes also. And then there'll be more funds needed from the center. Yes, a lot has to be done, but in terms of monetary terms. And, monetary part is the function of the RBI. It is not the function of the government. Government has to look about the fiscal expenditures. And Modi government has done whatever has been done. It has been done in terms of monetary figures, and the monetary figures have been released by RBI. Fiscal part is still to be done, and there is a way forward to do, because as far as ratings are concerned, people are saying that if we have seen 8% of growth in the financial year 16, 8.3% in 17, 6.6 in 18, 6.1 in 19, 4.2 in 20. But in 21, we are looking forward to just negative figures. The estimated growth of GDP in 2021 is -5. -5, a tremendous concern for the economy right now. Worst recession India is witnessing and going to witness since last 3 decades. Economic reforms are done, but they are not enough. This is my opinion of this. But we have experts on this, and I would like them to put their insight on the same. We have Professor J.V. Vaishampayan sir with us, Vice Chancellor of Bundelkhand University. Sir is merely required any introduction though. He is well known for his work in the field of education. Sir holds a doctoral degree from Lucknow University, having enriched experience of 35 years with publications of research papers in journals of repute. Sir has also authored many more books in the areas of economics. Sir was a part of UGC team who visited nations like Philippines, Thailand for providing education on population. He has headed universities like Rajshri Tandon Open University and CHM University Kanpur as Vice Chancellor. Sir, we welcome you today, and I would request you to take the session forward. Professor J.V. Vaishampayan sir.
If we see the growth rate of different sectors, in the last 5 years, the primary or the agriculture sector has grown by 3%. The secondary or the industrial sector is growing by approximately 8%, and the tertiary sector is growing by 9%. So not only the share of the services sector is high, but its growth rate is also high. So actually the services sector is pulling the entire economy, and therefore when the sector which is pulling the entire economy, it comes under crisis, it causes the real impact. And let us see what are the most affected services. The hospitality and tourism, we all know it has come to a standstill. Only now some of the hotels are being allowed to open. Tourism is almost zero. Travel and transport is now starting. Entertainment is almost nil because no new production is taking place either for TV programs or for films. Sports is also not there. You know that IPL has been deferred. Financial services and markets are relatively open, but the financial services are impacted. Financial markets are more or less open. The professional services, retailing, education, e-commerce. E-commerce is only picking up, and in this crisis, only the e-commerce is being allowed. Construction is now starting. Excellent. Now, why services sector is so critical? Number one is that there is a high share in GDP, as we have seen that approximately 60% of the share of the GDP is from services sector. So it is the highest one, rather 60%. High growth rate, as we have just seen, that 9% in the last few years is the growth rate. The biggest important thing is about it is a non-storable product. While agricultural production, industrial production is storable. Even if there is no demand, you can produce and store it. But services sector is one which is not storable. If one quarter is without services, the entire quarter is lost. This is very uniqueness about the services sector. Now, high employment, although the employment in agriculture is greater, but the employment in the services sector is about 32% or more. Now, this is affected by both domestic and global factors. We know that globally, Also, we are a big player in the services exports, and our IT services are actually feeding the entire world, including the Western world, US and Europe. So, if there is impact in the US, that is going to affect the services sector export very much. It earns a lot of foreign exchange. The net income from services, called as income from invisibles, in 2018-19 is 7,176 billion. So that is a quite huge amount. So that is why services sector is so critical. Next. Now, what are the unique points of this situation? This is the large number of unknown unknowns. This is a very unique thing, that origin of pandemic is unknown till now. Line of treatment is also still unknown. How and when will it end? That is also unknown. And how economic behavior will change. Often it is said that the coronavirus is going to continue, going to live, and we have to live with it. So how it will affect our economic behavior, because when you go to a mall or to a cinema hall, so we have to sit together, and therefore we may not be allowed in future if the corona crisis continues. The experience of lockdown is very unique. We never had such a lockdown in the past. And that one very unpredicted the experience is the migration of labor from urban to rural area. In all the last several decades, there was a migration of labor from rural to urban areas. Now, because of the crisis in big cities and metropolitan towns, the labor is reverting back to their villages. This is also a very uncertain situation. Widespread containment measures that are affecting also economic. The lower number of young fatalities. Most of the affected people are older population or affected by some other disease also. The unemployment hardships, demoralization, this is going to affect the productivity in all the sectors of the economy. The work from home, which is being practiced these days, but it will have a very adverse impact and a demoralized effect on the services, even of the software engineers. Presently, they may be happy because they are not losing the job, but continuously working from home will create a demoralization in their functioning. Next. Now, till the time we don't find a vaccine or a sure treatment, we have to live with it. Now, how to get out of it? Now, lifestyle changes is one, but how we will be affected is that what do we take out of it? The government has announced several measures, including fiscal measures, which are going to create demand for it. I think this demand taking will give a pump to the economy, and the economy will gradually develop. Sometimes people will say we will have a V-shaped growth. That means with the same speed that it has gone down, it will come up, it will give a boost to the economy in the same way, which may exactly not be correct, but our infrastructure is intact, our banking sector is intact, although it is in stress. So once the lockdown is gradually lifted, especially in the big towns and metropolitan cities, I think life will come back, and we will again have a growth rate. In this particular year, there is the fiscal year 2021, definitely we will be having a recession. The GDP may actually see a negative growth, but I think 2021 onwards, it is sure to pick up, and that is the hope that we have, and I think we will surely have it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. We were privileged to hear you. I'm sorry to all the participants for the technical lag that we are facing. We have with us ADN Bajpayee sir. Sir, कैसे हैं आप?
मैं ठीक हूँ बेटा, ठीक हूँ।
सर प्रणाम। आप मेरे गुरु के भी गुरु हैं, तो आपको शत प्रणाम।
नमस्ते।
आप एक ब्रीफ इंट्रोडक्शन दूंगी शुरू करने से पहले।
If somebody has any questions, welcome.
Sir, we'll have a question answers round at the last, sir. We'll all of you together. Sir, Professor
If some
A.D.
questions are there,
Bajpai, former Vice Chancellor
you're welcome
of
to raise
Madhya Pradesh
questions.
University, Shimla, and APS University, Rewa. He is the council member of several councils of national and international repute. Sir holds a doctoral degree in economics and has several publications in journals of repute. He has represented India in many global forums in nations like Portugal, South Africa, and Kenya. He is also awarded by various awards like Guru Vasisht Samman International Peace.
Then only we can be able to match and also balance the economy assets like Bina Agrawal or any others I was just listening today. It may be, you see, a broad based, you see, less than you, and you see, broader than we can just get particular shape of the economic recovery with these words. Because as I told you that I have to join another webinar right now, I am thankful to Shivani and A.K. Bhadauria and also Professor O.P. Shukla and many other friends who are just seeing me, listening to me. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for sparing in your valuable time for us. It was pleasure hearing you. And आपका आशीर्वाद सदैव हमें चाहिए होगा. आपसे गुजारिश है कि बहुत जल्द हम लोग अपने कैंपस में भी मिलेंगे. और इस बार आप आकर हम लोगों को जरूर अपने प्रस्तुति से हमें जरूर आप हमें आभार हमारे प्रकट करने का मौका जरूर देंगे.
जी 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 नमस्कार.
नमस्कार सर. शुक्ला सर हैं हमारे साथ, प्रोफेसर ओपी शुक्ला. दो आई हैव ऑलरेडी इंट्रोड्यूस्ड हिज प्रोफाइल टू यू. And Professor O.P. Shukla, he is presently the principal of NDA, and he has worked a lot in terms of research, and he holds a doctoral degree in economics from CSGM University only, and he has more than 30 years of experience in research, also teaching and administration also. He is the consultant to ICSSR, and he is also a member of Planning Commission. He has been associated with Indian Economic Association, Indian Institute of Public Administration, Indian Society of Labor Economics, and many more. And above all, as I told you, he has been my mentor, and he has a great contribution towards what am I today. Sir, I welcome you once again, and please take over the session now.
Thank you. Am I audible?
Yes,
am I
sir.
audible?
Yes,
Yes, sir.
Yes,
respected Professor A.D. Bajpai sir, my brother, and respected
Namaskar.
Professor Besam Pai sir, my friend Guru Captain Jha, and the very dynamic, active educationist, Dr. Shivani Kapoor. At her initiative, only this webinar of today is taking place, and also other fellow participants. The topic of today's webinar, the impact of COVID-19 and Indian economy and way forward. So my focus, since I'm not going to present in a formal way, but my discussion on this aspect will be confining to the pandemic lockdown and its impact which has taken place across the world, and what is the way forward. So in the next couple of minutes, I shall be covering on these three aspects. As we all know that the COVID-19 pandemic and lockdown has created an unprecedented situation across the world. It has impacted the health and wealth of each and every nation. In the last few months, the world has changed drastically, and all socio-economic, political aspects. Even the international relations, we can say that are going to change in some different directions, and the directions are well known. We can see the European Union, America on the one hand, and the China and other allies on the other side. Since today's we have to discuss on the economic side, so therefore I'm not going on this particular side, but we can say that the economic activities across the world have come to a very standstill. The indicators of this standstill are as follows. The closure of industries have taken place, the losses of jobs, labor migration, approximately 1.5 crore labor has migrated very recently during the last 2 months. export-import decline across the world. Almost the data which are revealing that 60% exports and imports have declined and production decline. And what we can say in nutshell, that the overall supply chain disruption in the economy has taken place. Another indicator which is there, that the economic growth, which itself was declining from the last 2 years, that was 2018-19, which was 6.1%. It declined in 2019-20 to 4.2%. And the recent estimates of all agencies, Center for Monitoring Indian Economy and others, are saying that this growth rate is going to be negative. Even the RBI has also concurred the same thing. So this is a very serious cause of concern, or the very economic impact which we are seeing, the COVID-19 or the pandemic. And also the very impact of Amphan, which has taken place in Odisha, and today, which in Maharashtra state we are seeing the very Nisarg, which has come and is affecting the very socio-economic things in the Maharashtra state as well as in the Gujarat state. So besides the economic growth, there are per capita income is also going to be negative as per the RBI estimates. So what we are going to have in the short run and the medium term of this, the cost of COVID-19 in the short run is that economic slowdown, job losses, and other socio-economic factors. Another good indicator, though it is not good in terms of its impact, that is the unemployment rate, which Professor A.D.N. Bajpai has highlighted, that we have again a very unprecedented high unemployment rate, and according to the survey, 10 million workers have migrated to the place of origin, and 120 million jobs have been lost in April 2020 due to this COVID-19 and lockdown. The unemployment rate in April 2020 was 23.5%, which was nearly 3 times higher than the employment rate in March 2020. An estimate also shows that 6 out of 10 people in rural areas have lost their jobs. Dear participant, please examine the impact of this loss of jobs. 6 out of 10 people residing in the rural areas have lost their jobs, while 8 out of 10 workers from the vulnerable communities and the unorganized sector, which Professor A.D.N. Bajpai was highlighting very recently, in the urban area, they have also lost their jobs. So this gives an indication towards the deepening of not only the rural economies, which are coming into the rural distress, we can call it, as well as the urban informal economy also. So this is what the situation which we are seeing, the economic growth decline, the unemployment taking place, the rural distress. So these 3-4 factors which are going to have a very cumulative adverse impact on our society, at least in the short run we can say. So there is a desperate need from the governing agencies, from the government side, to flow cash in the rural areas, which can be eased by providing work to the people and generating income for the people, which is an essential thing. And in this context, to resolve the crisis which has taken place, the immediate solution to the problem lies in proactive government measures. Whenever any crisis is there in the family or in society, people should see to their head of family or head of the state. So similarly, what I have pointed out in my recommendations as part of the solution to how to go way ahead. The first thing in the rural areas, which is essentially required, where our 60% population live, that we have to give job cards for all. The workers who have migrated or the workers who are there. everyone should get a job card. And this job card should be for 200 days work in the rural areas. Presently, under the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme, there is a provision for the people who are seeking employment for 100 days. But what I want to suggest through this webinar, that immediate the government should take a call, whether the state government or the central government, to increase the number of days under this job card program, and that is from 100 to 200 days. Also, the families which are headed by the elderly people, therein no one is there to work. So in the elderly families also in the rural areas, at least for 100 days, the job card should be given to that head of the family who is an elder person. Fourth is the timely and the complete payment to be made. There are schemes, there are people who are the beneficiaries of those very schemes, but they are not getting the things as per their entitlement and also as per well in time. So the people should get their entitlements in terms of monetary benefits or cash transfer to their account in time, and the accurate payment which has to be made, the complete payment. So the fifth point which I want to say based on this, five suggestions for the rural economy, the immediate crisis which has taken place, is that there must be some strengthening towards the transparency. I mean to say that the transparency means fixing the very accountability. And if people have any grievance, they should represent the grievance through grievance redressal mechanism. So the grievance redressal mechanism, and there should be a social audit also. So these very 5 points for the rural economies require an urgent attention of the government as well as the other things. However, by seeing this crisis which has taken place across the world and the various measures which the world community has taken, our government has taken various measures. I appreciate those very measures which the government has taken, and particularly the initiatives taken by the government which comes within the fiscal and the financial domain. The total package announced by the government, comprising of both fiscal as well as the financial aspects, comprising of 20 lakh crore. And with this 20 lakh crore package, the aim which our Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi has said, to make the country Atmanirbhar. Obviously, we are sure that with this package, at least some startup will take place. However, when we bifurcate this 20 lakh crore, that how this is going to be utilized, where this money is going, and what will be the impact of this 20 lakh crore, we find that the government to business, 4.5 lakh crore is going to the business sector from the government side. And government to people, 5.45 crore. And government to the banks, 7.26 crore. So this is the broader classification of the 20 lakh crore. That means government to bank means the bank has been liquidated more and more money, and now this money will be used for MSME, micro, small and medium enterprises, that they will have, they borrow the money from the banks and they can expand their businesses. So the avenues have been created from the government side for the people. But the very immediate solution to the crisis which has taken place on the economic front may not be resolved with this 20 lakh crore. Though the amount is very big, but this amount will take some gestation to banks. When I say that the 7.26 lakh crore rupees is in the banks, now the people have to borrow. The MSME sector has to utilize it. So when the capital formation takes place, it has its own gestation period. And then the production takes place, then employment generates, the demand and all those things take place. So therefore, the package of the government has some short-term bearing also as well as the medium-term bearing. So the cost to the government of this, actual cost to the government which is coming, is 3.2 lakh crore. So I will not go further on this particular aspect, that how this 20 lakh crore package which has been announced. Besides this, the important measures which the government has taken, I will just highlight upon them and then we will conclude in that. The role of FDI the government has taken a long-term perspective also to resolve the crisis, because the corona which has come is not going to out of our system immediately. We have to live with the corona. We have to be safer as well as strengthen our economy within this. That's why the recent locking system which has started a positive impact on the commercial activities. So the FDI sector, particularly the defense, where the FDI limit has been increased from 25 to 75%. Upgradation of industrial infrastructure. Various policy initiatives are going to take place on the very upgradation of the industrial sector wherever any infrastructures are required. Even the mining sector is being opened for the private entrepreneurial things will go there, and as a result of this, competition, transparency things will take place, and they will definitely bring the benefit to the society at large. Airport development through public-private partnership is also an initiative. Various tariff policy reforms have been taken place, and even the atomic energy related reforms which the government has started. So the reforms which have taken place and the package which the government has announced, we are confident that there will be significant changes, but it's a matter of time. But at the same time, any policy which is initiated at the government level, the people's response is also very important. The implementation part is also very important. Policies are there, but how effectively on the ground it will be implemented also a cause of concern. But we are hopeful that in the time to come, this present crisis which is there will be mitigated, and all agencies which are there in a coordinated manner, the fruitful results will come when on ground things will be implemented. So Dr. Shivani, thank you very much for the opportunity which has been given to me. I am just putting, these are some of my observations based for this COVID-19 and its impact and how we can go ahead, or what is the way ahead situation is there. I would like to stop at this point, and if any question or any doubt clarification is there, so this karke. Thank you, Dr. Shivani, for your good initiative which you have taken. It's require a very, very applaud from our side. We are grateful to you, APJ.
Thank you so much, sir, for that insightful session. We are graced with your presence, and whatever you said, yes, they have broadened our horizons of thinking also. We'll have a question answer round after this last presentation by UK Jha sir, and after that we'll be open to the question answers round. So, UK Jha sir, we welcome you today, Group Captain UK Jha sir. He has served esteemed Indian Air Force for 26 years. And presently he is serving in Charlton College of Business, University of Massachusetts. He has presented his research papers in various international conferences organized by renowned institutions. He has also led Indian delegation on the Armed Forces to International Symposium at Spanish Military Academy. Welcome you, sir, and we are graced with your presence. I request you to take over the session, sir. UK Jha sir.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Vice Chancellor Vishyapam, Professor Sukla, Dean Baduria, and Dr. Shivani. Now I'll just try and okay. Can you all see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Is my screen? Okay. So there's already a lot of talk given about what the government of India has done and what needs to be done. Now I'll try and give you the peculiarity of Indian economy as compared to a lot of other economies which are compared without focusing too much about our uniqueness. So just to highlight my point, I want to take an example and show it to you that disaster. Nothing like this has happened in last 100 years. Last time when such a pandemic had taken place in India, we lost about 15 to 20 million people. That's 5% of our population. US at that time was about 4 to 5 lakhs. Present scenario is 110. And in US, the more death took place in second wave. So US is more or less on the same track. We have managed to curtail our death from 1.5 to 5,000. So every disaster brings out a new innovation, new way, and the quality of life improves. So just look at these civilizations which have been existent since past. And if you notice, whether the civilization is in Africa, Arab world, India, China, South America, North America, Europe, they have a lot of similarity, and large number of them you may have already been aware. The one I want to highlight is all this civilization took place where the temperature was moderate. That means the temperature was about 5 to 10 degrees below our body temperature. The civilization was on either side of Mediterranean, but not towards the northern part of Europe. It's only once the population started increasing, the migration started taking place to more rough terrain and harsh weather conditions. India was lucky and fortunate enough. If you notice, this is the divided India. And if you include Bangladesh and Pakistan, this number will further increase. I've highlighted the other 6 countries bigger than us and 2 smaller countries I'll talk about later. We are blessed that we had a huge cultivable land, moderate temperature, everything was perfect. And that was the reason that we flourished extremely well till the end of the first millennium. But the very blessings became our disguise. We did not innovate enough to cope up with the changing world. Whereas the countries like Netherlands, England, they were pushed towards the brink. They had no further place to move. Netherlands, you'll understand, is average elevation is below sea level. So they had to do something for the growing population. The conventional method of agriculture was not enough to feed. And if you notice here, these are the countries where some form of mechanized farming started. These are the same set of countries where capitalism started, because persons were ready to pay more to feed themselves, and anyone who could provide better quality of product, more quantity of product was being rewarded. Without going into details about what is capitalism and socialism, socialism became an outcome of, or you can say side impact of capitalism, and capitalism started flourishing. It was brutal. Only the strongest computer could survive, which led to exploitation, and in retaliation, we had socialism. But presently, none other country follows extreme case of capitalism or socialism. US, one side, which is to a very high degree of capitalism, where even healthcare is in corporate sector, also had socialist measures like food stamp, Medicare, and China, which is extreme socialism, also has extremely large percentage of property in private hand. So we are actually following a mixed economy. So socialism that everyone keeps talking about is more compassionate, provided it's economically viable. For one, taking a contrarian view that socialism may sound good, but it's a right recipe for disaster. I'll support my argument with 2 examples. One is Argentina. In the 19th century, the only country which was growing almost at the pace of US was Argentina. By 1908, it had become 7th wealthiest country. And if you look at, it was at per capita income better than a large number of European countries. And during this time, Japan was an imperialist country. In spite of that, Argentina was far ahead. It was their socialist measures that they have landed up from 7th to 69th and they're slipping below. The other country is Venezuela. They have the largest oil reserve, second highest gold reserve, 8th largest natural gas reserve, and it was 4th wealthiest nation per capita not long ago, that is 1950. It's exactly the same expenditure that every talks in India. Healthcare should be by the government, education should be by the government, food subsidy. It is the exactly same things that every Indian keeps asking led to Venezuela to the present state. Today, the poverty level is 90%, 9 out of 10 are below poverty. Poverty is so extreme that on average, Venezuelans have lost 24 pounds in 1 year. Everyone is leaving country, inflation rate is through the roof. So socialism in Indian context, just look at this. When everyone talks about free education in Sweden, they don't talk about the Sweden tax to GDP ratio is 54%. So you are not paying directly, you are paying indirectly. In India, tax to GDP is 10.9. That means the government has only so much money to do all its activity. The other side, inflation is 4.84. When everyone talks about more money in the hands of poor, in the present scenario, inflation will go through the roof, and it is the very same poor who is going to be the worst affected. Look at our debt to GDP ratio. The ideal debt to GDP ratio should be 77% for developed countries and 64% for the developing nation. So we are already beyond the ideal debt to GDP ratio. Now the question will come, United States is more than 100%, Japan is 300% or more than 200%. Japanese have actually borrowed internally, so it does not affect their rating. And US is the supplier of the money. 84% of foreign trade is done with the help of dollar. 2008, the total loss of economic disaster in 2008 has cost US $23 trillion. Who's paid for this? The rest of the world, apart from US. So obviously we can't be comparing with US. Two countries, the impact of debt to GDP does not have a significant impact provided your economy is closed. Greece and Italy traditionally had high debt to GDP ratio, but it was only when they got integrated in Eurozone, compounded with 2008 disaster, that the countries have been declared junk. So till time the borrowing is internal, like in case of Japan or in case of US, the percentage may not impact. For a country like India, which depends heavily on import of oil, this is very significant. Now, everyone has talked already a lot about the impact of COVID on Indian economy. The figures have been rattled a large number of times. So I'm not going to repeat it. Only thing that I want to highlight is it has impacted not only the demand, it has also impacted the supply. Any additional pumping of money, first of all, India does not have money, I have already shown you. But pumping of money will only increase demand without increasing the supply. That means sure disaster for inflation. So what can we do? Let me do a SWOT analysis of what India is. India has vast network of all types of industry. That means we can manufacture anything and everything within our country. Over a period of time, Indian companies have improved their quality that they can compete globally with anyone in the world. India is the second largest English-speaking country, and we have very large pool of IT skilled person which are ready to work at a relatively low cost. When I say low cost, is compared to the developed countries. And in last few years, government is pushing with a lot of reforms like insolvency and bankruptcy code. Now they have announced there will be some changes in labor laws. There's large amount of FDI which is flowing into India. India has become second largest manufacturer of cell phones, automobile. Our weakness is labor laws and trade union. No industry wants to have union within their organization. And India, the trade unions have the political affiliation. So a lot of time the protest is for political reason rather than economic conditions. If you notice over a period of time, a lot of low-skilled jobs are being taken over by machines. So you have to keep changing your skill level, keep upgrading it. It's a natural process that anyone who is unskilled will be left out. So skill development still requires a lot of attention. We did try an experiment with SEZ, but our experiment was total disaster. If you compare with China, they had dedicated business ecosystem where everything was taken care of. And Chinese economy from $150 million to $13 trillion took less than 50 years. The opportunity that we have is this COVID-19 has proved to the world that they put all the egg in the same basket. When there was lockdown in China, the international supply chain was totally broken. The country was struggling to get the basic needs. So now, more than ever, it has started a long time back, but this has highlighted this point that there should be diversification of international supply chain, which has to be responsive, resilient, and flexible, apart from being cost-effective, quality, and delivery. It will change from just in time to just in case. This COVID-19 has also proved at one point that large number of IT-related jobs or data analyst jobs can be done remotely. That means, rather than hiring huge commercial space in big cities, now this could be outsourced to countries like India, and this is a huge opportunity in this. India is the second largest importer of arms, and Indian Armed Forces also requires urgent modernization. Now, increasing FDI from 25 to 75% will help to modernize with indigenous product, the way Navy has done. Navy has actually achieved this to a large extent. India's over-reliance on import of coal and natural has been taking toll on its foreign exchange reserve. India has put themselves ambitious target of generating 57% of its electricity need by renewable energy by 2030. Against the stipulated target is for 40%. Now this will further get boosted and we can push this particular aspect. The threat that we have is when the manufacturing started in China, the labor cost was extremely low. But as the Chinese economy grew, the labor cost. So in the last 15 years, a lot of manufacturing units have actually shifted out of China to Vietnam, Indonesia, Thailand, and Mexico. So even if we start the Make in India program, we have to compete with all these countries. In India, there's large sector of informal organizations where the working conditions are poor. India does not have very good track record in terms of corruption. We did have few environmental disasters, and unlike China, where they can force 25% purchase of new car to be electric, in a democracy like ours, even that is not possible. And in last 30 years of globalization, a lot of jobs have been lost in developed country. So generally, their ecosystem in developed country is against globalization. the most liberal leader like Macron is also against globalization now. So let's look at positive side of it. Unlike other countries, agriculture contributes about 15.4% of our GDP. Now this sector is not going to be impacted very much. In fact, this sector is likely to get a boost because FCI is going to procure more food grain to feed the poor, so that farmers are likely to be benefited. So we have a silver lining for the very fact that we were regretting all this while. Even from the employment sector, if we look at it, 43% of our manpower is employed in agriculture, and against 2% in US. Now, there are two aspects to it. Not that large number of us will be unaffected because of this crisis. The second is 2% was feeding 98%. That means any impact on 98% will have direct impact on 2. Here is almost 1:1. So in particular case. The next sector which is going to be the worst affected is tourism. China is one country where the lockdown happened first and it was strictest. It's also the country where everything has opened up. It's working at 90% efficiency. The remaining 10% is in field of hospitality, tourism, other aspects. It has nothing to do with China. This fear is across the board. Sweden, which went for herd immunity, even in those countries, the expenditure on such thing had dropped by 25 to 30%. And Denmark, which went for lockdown, again, it has dropped by the similar percentage. So the fear, the mind of the people is going to last for longer. And tourism is one which is going to be the worst affected. Luckily for us, though the tourism was increasing and it was one of the largest contributor for foreign exchange, will not be that impacted as compared to the other countries. Certain countries like Greece depend mainly on tourism for their survival. We are not in that particular condition. So we are much better off both in terms of employment and the impact of COVID-19 compared to the rest of the world. Now, everyone has already talked in detail about it, what government has done and what RBI has done. One particular aspect I want to just highlight, that there is something called money velocity or money multiplier. By reducing that the factor CRR from 5% to 4%, I'm using the figure which is current is 3% because it's easy to explain. If it is 5%, the money multiplier becomes 100 divided by 5, that means 20 times. If it draws from 5 to 4, the multiplication becomes from 20 to 25 times. So it is 25 times, 5 times more. We cannot survive the way we've been doing it for last millennium. We have missed out all the opportunities that world provided us, whether in terms of industrial revolution, globalization. Now we should not leave out this. I said the nature of the job will keep changing. It will change from low skill job to high skill job. And hence, we need to be prepared for the future job, like 3D printing, automobile analyst engineers, list us and less. For quite some time, a lot of people will be too scared to visit malls and shop. And this will give a boost to e-commerce. So, the shop owners who can afford should digitize their product, set up a website and encourage e-commerce, because that is what is going to help them out in the near future as well as in long run. When the Amazon hit the business of Target, Walmart, they had to follow the same pattern. And last but not the least is Initially, all the advertisement revenue used to go to the print and mainstream media. Now, with the advent of Twitter, Facebook, any advertisement in terms of election, anything, the revenue goes to the US. So not only the Indians are losing, even the tax on that revenue is a loss to the government of India. So we are the biggest consumer market, or one of the biggest consumer market in the world. I still remember after Pokhran 2, when then Finance Minister Yashwant Sinha was giving a budget speech, someone asked that it does not factor in the impact of sanctions on India. And he said, I'm not aware about quantum and type of sanction. And it was not India, it was the customer base of India which forced US to remove the very sanction within 6 to 8 months. So we are not realizing that we are such a huge market. We have internal market where everything can be produced and consumed. Whereas a lot of countries which depend on export will be worse hit than us. So this is an opportunity for us to look where we are lacking and how we can overcome this. With this, I've finished and I'm ready for any question and answers. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Before we take up question answers round, I would just like to summarize what our esteemed guests have said today. We started with Besham Payan sir, who has thrown light on the effect of this COVID on COVID-19 on the service sector. Then we got to know the impact of this COVID-19 on agriculture through ADN Bajpai sir. Then we heard O.P. Shukla sir, who was talking about employment, unemployment, migrated labor, and people. He was talking about various reform government has done. He was talking about the defense sector getting a boost of 25% to 75%. And then we heard Uday Kanja sir, who was telling the effect of COVID in the international context. So, we all agree to few points here. First is that yes. The migrant labor is the cause of issue for all of us. The unemployment which has rose due to this post-COVID, as a effect, they have to be taken care of. Land reforms need to take place because most of the, the GDP growth is coming from land that we have, and because of the land only, as said by Uday Kanja sir, we'll be less affected as compared to the other. Economies, because we are still looking forward to the agriculture part. And then, yes, there is a result, urgent need of more reforms in the economy. Though RBI has liquidated, has injected liquidity into the system, but most of the things have been done on the supply, and demand is still to be addressed. So we need to look into all these things, and we need to identify various other things where we can, again look into how things can be done. Now, sir has suggested, they all have suggested few things like how to give a boost to economy. Suggestions have been forwarded to the government also, and we are still looking forward to various other reforms that the government will take place to address the things. Yes, India is a big market, as Jha sir also said, Shukla sir also addressed, and even Besham Payan sir said that unknown is yet to be known. So how things will go is still to be known, but yes, India is coming out as a big market, as a big alternative other than China to the entire world. But still, we will have to look into the bureaucracy, the corruption part, and the environmental safety, which are a threat for others. If we overcome all these things, definitely we are going to bring India to a great level. Otherwise, yes, there's a big time of recession these days. We have to look into creating a world-class manufacturing ecosystem. Though all these economic packages that have been announced by the government, they have injected a lot of liquidity for new startup, but still we have to foster innovation and skill. We still have to look after the e-commerce and digitalization part. And again, we'll have to look into that we are blessed with a mixed economy. As Jha said, that capitalism and socialism, they have their own pros and cons. But because of being a mixed economy, we were able to survive this. But yes, at the same time, as told by other speakers, we are mostly hit as compared to the other years. This is the first recession of its own kind in the last 3 decades. And lot has to be done again, yet to be done to improve and coming up to the level. Yes, GDP is dropping down, but we are optimistic that after the gestation period, as told by Professor O.P. Shukla, so that government has announced packages for the short-term, long-term and medium-term period. Right now, we are not able to see that because of immediate crisis, but in the government's policies will definitely help us to gain, because in the medium term also and in the long term also, the policy is not oriented for the short term. They have been focusing on the middle term gains also, and the midterm gains also, and the long term gains also. Industry infrastructure is in place. Private public partnership is being encouraged in both mining, airport, atomic energy is also being taken care of. So again, but yet still I'll be finishing it with Vaishampayan sirs that we still need to know the unknown. So now we'll be taking up the questions which are there with us. So my first question, as given by one of the participants here, is that how would COVID-19 change our thinking process to adopt change to meet the international aspiration for socio-political economic challenges? I request Professor Vaishampayan sir to address this question. How would COVID-19 change our thinking process to adopt change to meet international aspirations for socio-political economic challenges? Professor Vaishampayan sir.
The question is too wide to be explained in few minutes, but I would like to answer that. Now, if the coronavirus continues, albeit at a reduced pace, then the lifestyle is going to change the world over. The social distancing has become a norm, and therefore the lifestyle of the people, the way they go to their offices, the way they go to market, the way they go to the tourist places, all these things are going to change. In that situation, the travel and tourism industry and the hospitality industry is surely going to suffer a lot. Or they have to modify their whole scheme. For example, even in restaurant, the restaurants have to be partitioned. Each table needs to be partitioned, as it is being done in some countries of the Europe. Then even while sitting in conferences, this is one way we are doing it. But if people really want physical presence in a conference, then again a lot of social distancing and the capacities have to be expanded, the spacing has to be expanded. In their own lives, people will spend more time at home rather than going abroad or at other places. This is going to happen in India. It has already happened to a large extent. So if we want to continue as a big market, then definitely we have to adopt as per our customers. As far as production is concerned, we have to modify our production and services according to the needs of the people in Europe, US and other countries. Lot of products from India. As far as the products are concerned, we need to now concentrate on those products which they would be demanding in future. Similarly, all other lifestyles, for example, entertainment industry, probably people will spend more time at their homes in entertainment. In the web series will become more popular rather than films in the cinema hall. So all these changes are likely to come. And if we want to continue our primary space in the economic world, we have to modify and we have to generate and innovate products will meet the needs of the customers. That is the absolute thing.
Right. Thank you so much.
I would like to just add what Professor Champayan sir had said, Vesampayan sir had said. The very relevant point he has highlighted. But if we also see one more point, that whether during the Corona or post-Corona period, the new international world economic order is going to emerge. Presently, we see that European Union and USA and the China. So there was a kind of bipolar world situation which was there. But in the post-Corona situation, which is going to emerge from bipolar to the multipolar world, and this new economic order, which definitely will take place with changing economic powers also, and they will be based on very situations. They will be based on very commercial interest. Permanently cannot be said that which union will take place, the kind of permanency in the international relations or in the new international economic order. So we are still in a very paradigm situation, that what will be the new international economic order, whether in the post-Corona period or even if Corona persists for some short-term or the medium-term situation, then also this is going to take place in a very short span of time. Industries from China have started thinking to migrate. Japan has also given some incentives to the industries which are situated in China to migrate. So even USA and the European Union are also thinking that their investment which was there in the China need to shift. So this type of the shifting of the investment and the shifting of the industries in the short run and in the medium term is definitely is a cause of our great interest and research also, and for the student to understand also. This is what. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. My next question is to Udaykant Jha, sir. Post-COVID, the world economy will resume, but it will be again a consumption-based economy that is absolutely unsustainable. Can India offer any sustainable economic model to the post-COVID world?
Hello. Can you hear me?
Sir, I can hear you.
Okay. If you look at this, there is always a comparison of Indian economy with the Western world. The Indian economy is based on consuming what is required, because the product supply side is less than the demand side. Whereas Western economy, the supply is more than the demand, and everyone is pushed towards spending more and more money. You cannot take a loan until unless you have a good credit score. You cannot have a good credit score until unless you have credit card. Every store has its own credit card. That means if you don't want a product, they'll push it to you. They want more and more item to be consumed. And because of this, 70% of US population do not even have $1,000 in their bank account. 40% of US population cannot even handle an emergency situation of $400. That is, whereas in India, because the supply is less than the demand, and most of the Asian economy is based on saving money. That means in case of any emergency, there is always some sort of money which is saved. The second aspect is, since the supply is still short of the demand, everything which is required or everything which is produced is getting consumed. And not only getting consumed, it's getting consumed multiple times. That means the wastage of the food, wastage of the plastic material is far lesser in a country like India as compared to the Western world. So at the moment, it's the right time not to emulate Western culture, but to enhance our existing culture and look into aspects where a modification could be done. One thing that comes to my mind is, initially all idols were made of mud, which was giving jobs as well as which could be disposed of easily. Now, Durga Puja, Ganesh Chaturthi, everything is made of plastic, which is not sustainable. So we have to look into aspects, something like this, which is job creation as well as environmental sustainability. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Would you like to comment on this, Vesampayan, sir?
Yes, surely it is very true that we are straining the environment too much, and that is why the consumption-based approach of development that has its own limitations. That is very true. In India also we are straining, but although our population is low and our per capita income is low, so therefore we always promote that the poor should consume more to come out of poverty. And the environmental impact now, so far we were taking environment as given, and we are trying to expand as much as possible. But environmental limitations, ecological issues, they have to be brought under the ambit of economics, and they are being brought. I think probably toward that he was hinting, and I entirely agree that the environmental angle has to be given to economic policies, and that is what sustainable development is all about. And that sustainable development has to be taken into account in all its economic policies.
Thank you, sir. Now my question is to O.P. Shukla, sir. Sir, which sectors of the economy are likely to recover the fastest and the slowest according to you? Which sectors of the economy are likely to recover the fastest and the slowest?
Oh, in our country, actually, depending on the very package which has been announced by the government of India, where substantial money is to be through lending by the bank, and that too in the MSME sector, micro, small and medium enterprises. So sector-wise classification by and large depends on the very investment being made by the business community as well as the money taken by the bank. So these are the two broader determinants for the industrial development in the immediate future also. However, we have potential. We have skilled labor also, we have unskilled labor also, and the availability of the labor now, because of this migration issue, labor has spread across the very origin place, particularly Bihar and Uttar Pradesh. So therefore, the sector which is likely to emerge, it appears that agro industries, agro processing industries are in the rural areas also. There is a potential for this, provided this is backed by the government policies very effectively.
Right, sir. Thank you so much, sir. So there is one more question in my chat box. It is open to anyone who would like to answer it first. That what would be the immediate impact on Indian economy after this lockdown? Because there are many more factors affecting economy besides this COVID-19.
The impact, as we had broadly indicated in our earlier discussion, that first of all we see that the economic growth has declined and it is becoming negative as per the RBI estimates. Even per capita income is also going to be very, very reduced, less, and also the unemployment which we are seeing. So the impact of this, the lockdown or the very pandemic is on the very negative side towards the economy. However, the post-COVID, because right now since the COVID and the Corona are existing, when exactly will be the post-COVID, so a very uncertain thing. We are living in a very uncertain situation, an unprecedented situation. So given this uncertainty, we cannot say when exactly the post-corona period, however the researches are on, and there are some claims which are coming by November or by December or by next year, some complete solution or the package will be there, which we are hopeful, and we pray to the God, let us have the earliest solution to the problem which has taken place. But however, the very crisis, the sectors which are facing our manufacturing sector, industrial sector, the crisis which is there to our laborer community also. So these are the very affected in our economy.
Thank you so much, sir. My question is to Jha, sir. One student is asking, what is the worst case scenario and the best case scenario for the Indian economy?
Actually, the biggest advantage, like everything has to be seen in the correct context. The biggest advantage that India has is a huge consumer base. In other words, what will happen is whatever is getting produced will be consumed. The biggest problem, handicap with the Western world is that in case they don't have money, and you have to understand, by giving out direct money, the money is spent within no time. Like $2 trillion was given as direct transfer of money in US, and it took less than a month to finish off the money. So direct transfer of money does not help much, even for a country like US. So in India, because we have a huge consumer base, anything which is getting produced will be consumed, and which will kickstart, it will start moving the money multiple times. One of the biggest problem with India is, you can say it at the moment is a saving grace. There is a lot of money which is saved in the bank, which is kept in the house, which does not move at all. Now in this crisis, these monies will start moving. No one will be holding money in their house for this or any day. So all this money which was held in the house as cash reserve or in the bank, they'll start generating more and more revenue for the country. That money will start moving. The money velocity will increase, which is not the case in the Western world, because the money which is given is consumed. And once the money is consumed and there's nothing to support that money, there's no one is manufacturing it. Only 2% is in agriculture is producing it. In US, in India, 3% is producing it. He'll get money and he'll start producing more. So agro-based industry, which he said, vegetables, lot of vegetables get wasted. In case the wastage is reduced in food grain, we have a lot of potential in that particular field. What are this thing? Tourism is worst case scenario. Fortunately, we have not developed to extent to be drastically impacted by tourism. Aviation is one which is going to be drastically impacted. It was under strain. The only surviving companies were Boeing and Airbus. Boeing is on the verge of bankruptcy. So it is not because of COVID. COVID is the last blow to airlines and aircraft manufacturing industry. But they were always under strain. The air travel per capita in India was one of the lowest. This is the worst affected, and it will have least impact on India. So fortunately for us, since we are not as developed as most of the Western world, the impact which is going to be on such sector, hospitality, restaurants, again restaurants, in Western world, no one cooks in their home, especially in US. In India, majority of the Indians cook at home. So they will be least impacted. The restaurant is not catering for such a large population. So these are the factors which will actually kickstart Indian economy faster than the rest of the Western world. And another thing is, because the debt, the countries with high debt to GDP ratio is likely to enter into deflation. Luckily for India, will not be in that scenario. So best case scenario, within a year or so, the economy should start improving, because there are a lot of positive factors in India as compared to the Western world. Western world was more efficient. Efficiency does not work in case of crisis, because we had more leeway, we can cash on those leeways. Thank you.
Vaishampayan sir, we have Professor O.P. Munga today with us in the seminar, and he in the chat box he says that I think Indian industries is likely to be adversely affected due to migration of workers to their home due to intense fear of COVID-19 and spread and non-humane attitude of private sector in denying wages and support. What is your take on this scenario?
Before coming to that, I would like to say one thing. The present economic crisis that we are facing is not due to any economic factor. It is not a high inflation or a deflation or a depression, anything. This is basically due to the lockdown, which has broken the entire supply chain in respect of all goods and services. This is the main thing. And as we gradually enter into unlocking phase, the faster the unlocking, the faster the economy will recover. And if the unlocking is not fast, then the relative impacts will further percolate downwards, and we will not be able to recover very fast. But if the unlocking is fast, we will surely recover as all sectors of economy, because the demand already exists, the liquidity also already exists. Only thing is that supply chains have been broken. Now, about the question that he raised, what was that exact question? I will answer it briefly.
Sir, he's saying that I think Indian industry is likely to migrate to workers.
Okay. Yeah. Now, the lockdown became so long that the patience of the workers who were working, that was lost, and therefore they had no option, or they thought they have no option to go back. So the entire reverse migration will be creating a problem not only in the industrial towns but in the villages also, because now the workers have gone to their homes. Why did they migrate to Mumbai or Ahmedabad or Bangalore? Because they had no opportunities, income opportunities, work opportunities at their places. So that is going to create two-way problem. One, in the industrial towns, where once they start the production process, they will not have adequate workers. And the second, the problem in the villages also, because there is not much to work in their villages. So villages will also, after a couple of months, they will also face the problem. Now, the way ahead lies, if the unlocking process is fast, then I think within a couple of months, the labor who have gone back to their villages, they will change their mind and would like to come back to their original places, because probably they have no big option in their villages also. And if that happens, I think the recovery will be faster.
Thank you so much, sir. Now my question is to O.P. Shukla, sir. So one student is saying that is laying off employees the right option by big shot companies when they can easily survive without the layoff and compromising a bit on their profit. How is this going to affect the small business? What will be their survival opportunities?
Dr. Shivani, just a few lines in the beginning I missed to understand.
That is laying off employees the right option by big shot companies when they can easily survive without the layoff and compromising a bit on their profit. How is this going to affect the small business? What will be their survival option?
Yeah, it's a very pertinent question actually, Dr. Shivani, actually in the present context, because most of the industries which are in the laying off and the labor have migrated. So to start those very industries again, so now it is a big challenge for those very industries particularly, whether they will survive with the labor which at present they have, are in the very vicinity of their surroundings, because labor has gone very far away there. Now that labor which earlier was there is very difficult to come from that place of origin to. It will take some time, and time is a confidence building measures will have to be initiated. And for that, the state of Uttar Pradesh, which has taken the Labour Migration Commission, Social Security, and all these steps which are going to take place. So these are the issues which are linked, and these issues are very challenging for the industries which are set up in the far-flung states, like in Gujarat, like in Goa and Maharashtra and other places. And 70% labor basically in these very industries which are here is basically from the Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh and Uttar Pradesh. These are the four states which are supplying by and large 70% labor force to these very states. So it's a big challenge, and in this challenge the strategy or the very approach or the plan which the industries will have to make, whether how to sustain, how to grow with the with or without, that means with the labor which is available to them or which they can make available from the local vicinity, or how through building confidence among the laborers which have gone. So this way somewhere the labor aspects have to be tackled by the industrialists also, which unfortunately they could not take after the lockdown, the very interest of the labor community which they could have taken. Now the issue has come as a biggest challenge for them, when they did not take in the interest of the labor community in terms of their survival, in terms of their bread and butter, in terms of their estate. So the issue is going to come, but we hope that the government will take appropriate measures for, first of all, building the confidence, secondly for provisioning of the social security measures. So these are the points. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Now Professor O.P. Monga is asking to Professor U.K. Jha, sir, that will India become proactive in reforming her outdated labor laws to attract foreign companies?
Yeah, the government has no choice, because a lot of business is moving out of China. It is not moving because of COVID-19. COVID-19, you can say, is the last nail in the coffin. So, if India has to attract labor, a large number of industries, it has to change its labor laws. The old concept that job security has to go, because no one would like to hire someone for a long term if he does not know the future of its own industry. So a lot of job they want to hire so that they can grow, and the moment there is issue with their growth, they can fire the employee. That's how the Western model works. Now in theory it looks nice that we should not lay off, but if you don't lay off, the company collapses and everyone is laid off. So no one saves the job. So anyone, though industries have undue advantage, but anyone who wants to give livelihood to others want to take that particular advantage. Anyone who's taking the risk is open to everyone. Not everyone is taking the risk. Anyone who takes the risk has to have that confidence that he will be rewarded for taking the risk. So government has no choice but to modify its labor laws so that more manufacturing can take place within India.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Vaishampayan sir, one student is asking, do banking sector need reforms after COVID-19 era? If yes, what?
Yeah, definitely. The banks are already facing a lot of stressed assets and a high NPA rate. And if the NPA rates continue to be high, then definitely there will be very big questions on the survival of smaller banks. And that has happened also in many cases. Although the government did not allow the banks to fail like the Yes Bank, but such situations can recur. So financial stability is the cornerstone of economic growth. And therefore, it is very necessary the banks are relieved of the stressed assets, or they are allowed to. And for that purpose, the loan waiver, I do not agree with the loan waivers at all, because the loan waivers create very big problem. It is a very populist measure, but it creates a very big problem for the banking sector, because everybody who has taken a loan, they think that they are not going to pay back the loan, and that further aggravates the problem. And not only that, those others also take there is what we call a deliberate delinquency. People do not deliberately pay back their loans. So that affects a problem on the banks. And if the banks really face very big stressed assets, then the interest of the depositors will be adversely affected. A time may come, if the banks are not improved, the time may come that the default of a bank will create the crisis among the depositors, and that is a very bad thing for any economy to happen.